TheSmartLocal.com.
What I loved about my psychiatrist was that she made it seem very normal. She made it seem like whatever that I was feeling was normal and there was nothing wrong with me. Welcome to the confession room. Could you share what you are struggling with? Ooh. No, I wouldn't say that I am still struggling with it, but it does come from time to time. And I struggle with depression, and the correct term that the psychiatrist and also the psychologist at IMH used on me was I have chronic depression and anxiety. I wouldn't say it became very serious. I think it just went out of hand because I didn't know how to control it back then. So that was something that I struggled with and I needed to get treatment for because when I get very anxious and when I cannot control my feelings or when the anxiety comes in, I spiral into this really weird place where my vision just turns red. It's almost like you put on 3D glasses, and that was when it was very severe. Like my entire vision would just go red and I would panic because suddenly my colors all disappear, and that adds on to that. And then what happens after that is I will not be able to control myself and I would just roll into a ball and I shake. And then I went through treatment where I learned on how to actually monitor these emotions as separate.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing. I know that it's definitely very heavy and not something that people can easily talk about, so I really appreciate you sharing that very deep and vulnerable part of yourself. I know myself very well how badly it can hurt on the worst days, but I also am very happy that you made it through those dark times, and it's really good that you found your coping mechanisms. You really deserve to celebrate your victory. Actually, if you think about it from a more positive perspective, it's kind of a blessing in a sense, because I really think that mental health struggles, although of course nobody would wish it upon even their worst enemy, but it really does strengthen us. I was diagnosed with acute depression and anxiety when I was in lower sec. So to suddenly feel such intense sadness that seemed to not go away, and no matter what I did, even if it's watching a funny show or hanging out with my friends, I just don't feel joy anymore. That was very scary, and it took a lot of getting used to, especially as such a young person. So if you don't mind sharing, when was your first exposure to depression and anxiety?
Mine came in right after national service actually, and I honestly didn't know the exact point of when it hit, because for me it was a very gradual thing. I think at first I kind of went through a phase of me being a bit more reserved, and I began to see the world in a different light because of the things that I experienced and the things that were done to me. I think one of the turning points was when I just came back home one day and I just turned off all the lights and I realized, okay, you know what, this feels nice. This feels right because I'm not feeling anything. Why should I even see anything? Why should I even hear anything? And I just settled into it. And at this point, art has always been something that I love. So at this point, I was spending my days just like sketching, and it was only until like my parents like saw my sketches that they were like questioning me, like, why are your drawings like this? Because most of it is weird looking, I guess. And then I think my parents threw those away. So when they threw that away, I felt like maybe they didn't understand, because I myself didn't understand what was happening to me. And I just kind of let it go on, and I just carried it throughout, because I keep telling myself, you know what, it's gonna fade, it's gonna fade. Maybe this is not depression, maybe I'm just oversensitive, maybe I am just too empathetic, maybe I think of other people's feelings too much. You know, I always dismiss it as that, because the term depression never occurred to me. It was only until when it got worse, and there was this particular day that I remember I was so desperate. Like, my thoughts were literally just, it wasn't even thoughts. It was like as though I could see how my body is gonna be found. I could see how sad my parents are gonna be. Like, I could see everything right in front of me happening, and I wasn't feeling anything. And that was when I got really scared, because I got no emotions. And then that's when I called the helpline, and I talked to this person on the line, and this person was trying to talk to me and trying to understand me. But I think it became too much to handle. So that's when everything just went downhill from there. And yeah, like, I think it took a while for the psychiatrist and the psychologist to talk to me, because I just didn't want to talk to anybody. So there were a lot of treatments where I just went in and I just didn't say anything. Yeah.
Thank you for going into that. I know that it can be very scary and painful to have to like transport yourself back in time and space and like almost relive those dark times. I think it's very hard for people who have depression to explain to others like what they're going through, and also when they ask, you know, what can I do to help you? And it's not that we don't want to accept the help that people offer, but a lot of the times we don't even know what's going on, and we don't even know like whether anything can be done. Yeah, so I think people who have like loved ones or people in their lives, I think sometimes a lot of it is just like patience. I remember my best friend in secondary school, she had not like had exposure to any like mental health issues, so this was all very new to her, but she was very, very patient, and she was always there and like willing to like hear me out. And even if I was too sad to like even speak, she would just sit there with me in silence and spend like hours with me. I think that kind of support is very, very appreciated. Were there other ways that you dealt with your depression and suicidal thoughts?
What I loved about my psychiatrist was that she made it seem very normal. She made it seem like whatever that I was feeling was normal and there was nothing wrong with me. I clearly remember there was this session where she asked me, what did you do this week? I said, I did nothing. She said, are you sure? Then I said, no, I couldn't sleep one night, and the thoughts were coming back, and my room seemed very dark. So I just woke up, I went to the storeroom, I took white paint and I just painted my room in the wee hours of the morning. And I asked her, do you think that's weird? She said to me, no, it's fine, it's totally normal. You can do whatever you want, this is your life, you know, you want to paint your room at 4 a.m., at 2 a.m., who cares? And that's when I realized, like, oh, okay, you know, like, this is fine. Like, I'm not any different than anybody else. Maybe it's just my thoughts and my emotions is a bit different. And I think because of that feeling that she gave me, it made me want to get better as well. So that was how she was very quick to realize maybe something that has to do with paint would work. And that's when I was introduced to art therapy, which was actually quite scary, to be honest, because they just put me in a room and they have like shelves and shelves of like art supplies, and they told me, you just go inside and sit down.
Thank you for sharing about your psychologist. She really sounds like such an angel. I think like for both of us, because we're now in like the working world and we are like so-called proper adults who have gotten better at handling our emotions, what were some ways that it has affected your career and maybe even like your relationships with the people around you?
Career-wise, I was, like I didn't want to say it at first, I guess, because I was afraid that my employer would think of me as less. I didn't want to be seen as someone who's incapable of mental breakdowns, or who can't control his emotions, or risk of, like having the company to be liable for any of my actions and stuff like that. That was one of the fears that I had. But I think slowly as I eased into work, I was very honest about it and I became open about it. So, and surprisingly, it has been widely accepted, and people don't see me less. They don't even see me as any different. So that's really nice, because they see me for the work that I put in, and nobody sees me as, oh, that guy with depression anymore. How about yourself? Like, did your history and what you're struggling with affect your career as well as your relationships?
I think because I started having this condition since I was still in school, I sort of had like a taste of how it would affect like my career, especially since the nature of my job is a lot of writing. It really bothered me that whenever I had a depressive episode, I would get like the clouded thoughts and like brain fog. Being able to write was like a point of pride for me. So it felt like I was stripped away of my worth and my value as a person, which was very sad to see. And when I started working, I was very scared of that coming back to haunt me. I think we're very, very blessed to be in, like what you mentioned, we are surrounded by very open-minded people, even if they're not aware of what exactly it's like to have depression. They are completely accepting of the fact, and they are always ready and willing to listen to our struggles. And I knew that if ever I get a relapse, it's not like the end of the world. I won't get like fired for not being able to write like a nice article. I'm wondering if you have like anything that you would say to young you if you were able to go back in time and tell them?
If there was a younger self right in front of me right now, I would probably tell him like, hey, you are supposed to experience this, because once you get through this phase, then that's when the world will be able to appreciate your smile a lot more than what you're trying to do right now. Because I think if I didn't go through it, I wouldn't have the strength to overcome like way worse. Because I think right after I slowly, as I finished with my recovery and as I was trying to adapt to, like the whole new feeling, it's almost like you get a new soul. I do not know if people experience that, but I do feel that things began to change a little bit by bit for me, because if I had succeeded in dying that day, I wouldn't have graduated from university. I wouldn't be on YouTube making people laugh. I wouldn't be making amazing friends. I wouldn't be making other people smile through television. Like, it's the whole idea of this is just a test and it will pass. But in order to pass that, you need to go through a journey, and this journey requires you to find help, understanding yourself better, finding someone who will be able to be like your sensei, you know, like this is going to pass as long as you go through this. It's a journey. But once you go through that journey, the benefits will be crazy.
Today's talk has inspired me to just believe in my strength a bit more, and the fact that I have gone through all those past adversities in my life and I've just emerged not just alive but thriving is testament of how much I can handle. I think I'll take on the challenge of being able to face future relapses without that overwhelming fear or even that sense of dread and thinking that there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. So thank you so much for sharing today.
You know, sometimes what we want to do is just forget the pain and forget the journey that we had to go through. But I think reliving those moments with someone who has been through something similar, it does feel weirdly nostalgic because it reminds us of how strong we are. Because some days we will forget how strong we are.
For me, I haven't really decided on what I want to be when I grow up. And so far, I haven't really gotten any recommendations from my parents. They just told me, be what you want to be.